Michael Carter had always thought of himself as a man who understood the rhythm of life. At 38, he was the kind of person who preferred the quiet moments. Early mornings when the city was still soft with dawn, evenings spent with a book or an old vinyl record spinning in the background. He lived alone in a modest apartment on the 4th floor of a brick building near the riverbank, a place that felt like a refuge from the noise of the world. It was a life marked by routine, a life carefully constructed after the unraveling of something he once thought unbreakable. His memories of Sarah were like photographs faded at the edges, the colors dulled, but the outlines stubbornly persistent. He met her 5 years ago at a mutual friend's gathering, her laugh a melody that caught him off guard, weaving itself into his days with an ease he hadn't expected. Sarah was the kind of woman whose presence filled a room without effort, whose warmth made even the coldest nights feel bearable. They shared dreams of travel, late-night conversations that stretched into the early hours, and the simple joy of being understood without words. For a time, Michael believed they were unshakable. But life, as it often does, had other plans. The breakup was sudden, born from a series of misunderstandings and unspoken fears that neither had the courage to confront. Sarah left, and with her went the part of Michael that had dared to hope. The apartment, once vibrant with her laughter, became a quiet shell. He kept the small things she left behind, a scarf, a book she loved, a photograph of the two of them at the coast, carefully tucked away in a drawer he seldom opened. They were relics of a past life, reminders of a love that had slipped through his fingers. In the months that followed, Michael's days settled into a pattern. He woke early, brewed a cup of black coffee, and sat by the window watching the river flow beneath the bridge. The city moved around him, bustling and indifferent, while he remained still, as if waiting for something to change. He returned to work at the marketing firm where he'd been for years, his efforts steady but uninspired. Conversations with colleagues were polite but distant. He kept his personal life guarded behind a carefully maintained wall. His friends noticed the shift. They reached out with invitations to dinners, weekends away, or casual get-togethers, but Michael often declined. The idea of opening up again, of exposing his raw edges to the world, felt daunting. He told himself it was easier this way, safer. Yet beneath the surface, a quiet loneliness simmered, a yearning for connection that he masked with a practiced smile. Still, there was a faint glimmer of hope buried deep within him, fragile but persistent. It came in unexpected moments. A song on the radio that stirred memories, the scent of rain on pavement, a stranger's smile on a crowded street. These fleeting instances reminded him that life was not static, that beneath the weight of loss there might be something waiting to bloom again. Michael often found himself walking through the neighborhood park in the evenings, the trees casting long shadows as the sun dipped below the horizon. It was here, amidst the rustle of leaves and the distant laughter of children, that he allowed himself to feel the ache of what was lost, and the possibility of what might still be. The park bench by the pond became his quiet sanctuary, a place where he could sit and watch the ripples spread across the water, each one a small disturbance in an otherwise still world. He thought about love, not in the idealized romantic sense that stories often told, but as something real and messy, fragile and resilient. He wondered if he could ever trust himself to embrace it again, to let someone in without fear of breaking. The idea was terrifying, and yet, beneath the fear, there was a stubborn hope that whispered of second chances. At work, Michael kept himself busy with projects, diving into campaigns and client meetings with a focus that sometimes surprised even him. His colleagues saw a man who was competent, reliable, and quietly determined, but few glimpsed the vulnerability that lingered beneath his calm exterior. He avoided conversations about his personal life, steering discussions toward safer topics, while Sarah's absence remained an unspoken shadow. On weekends, he frequented a small cafe near the river, a place where the barista knew his order by heart, and where the soft hum of conversation provided a gentle background to his thoughts. There he sometimes lingered with a notebook, scribbling down fragments of ideas or reflections, trying to make sense of the tangled emotions within him. Writing was a balm, a way to sift through the memories and fears that clung to his mind. Despite his efforts to maintain distance, Michael's heart wasn't entirely closed. He noticed the way the seasons changed, the crispness of autumn air, the quiet hush of snowfall, and found comfort in the constancy of nature's cycles. It reminded him that endings were often beginnings in disguise, that the cold of winter made way for the warmth of spring. His apartment was decorated with simple touches that spoke of a man who valued order but also subtle beauty. A framed photograph of the river at sunrise, a potted fern that thrived on his windowsill, and shelves lined with books that had been his companions through years of solitude. Each item was a thread in the fabric of his life, a testament to the quiet resilience that carried him forward. Michael's mornings began the same way. The alarm buzzed softly at 6, a reluctant start to the day. He brewed his coffee, savoring the rich aroma as he sat by the window, watching the city awaken. The routine brought a semblance of control, a way to anchor himself when his thoughts threatened to drift too far into the past. He often caught himself glancing at his phone, half expecting a message he knew would never come. The absence was a hollow ache, a reminder of the space Sarah once filled. He wondered if she thought of him sometimes, if the memories they shared lingered in her mind as they did in his. But he pushed the questions away, knowing that dwelling on what-ifs only deepened the wounds. One evening as he walked home beneath the amber glow of streetlights, Michael paused on the bridge overlooking the river. The water below flowed steadily, indifferent to the troubles of those who watched from above. He leaned on the railing, feeling the cool metal beneath his hands, and allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. The city buzzed around him, alive and full of possibility, yet he felt adrift, a man caught between the past and an uncertain future. He knew that healing wouldn't come overnight, and that opening his heart again would require courage he wasn't sure he possessed. But somewhere deep inside, a small voice urged him forward, reminding him that even in the darkest nights, dawn was inevitable. Michael Carter's story was just beginning to unfold, a journey marked by loss, resilience, and the faint stirrings of hope. The road ahead was unknown, but for the first time in a long while, he found himself willing to take the first step. It was on a crisp Saturday morning, the kind where the sky was a clear, unyielding blue and the air carried the faint scent of pine, that Michael found himself at the community center volunteering for a local charity event. It wasn't something he had planned. Rather, it was a suggestion from a colleague at work, a gentle nudge to get out of his usual solitude and reconnect with the world beyond his apartment walls. The idea of volunteering had seemed both daunting and strangely appealing, a chance to do something meaningful without the pressure of small talk or forced smiles. The center buzzed with quiet activity as volunteers arranged tables and unpacked boxes of supplies. Michael moved with a purposeful calm, stacking canned goods and folding pamphlets, his mind only half on the task. It was there, amid the hum of conversation and the shuffle of feet, that he first noticed Emma. She was standing near the entrance, her auburn hair catching the sunlight streaming through the windows. There was an easy warmth in her smile, a lightness in the way she moved as she greeted newcomers and guided them toward the registration desk. Michael caught himself watching her longer than he intended, surprised by the sudden flutter in his chest, a feeling he hadn't expected to return so quickly or so quietly. Emma was different from anyone Michael had met in a long time. She had a presence that didn't demand attention but invited it, a kindness that reached out without hesitation. As the morning wore on, their paths crossed several times, each encounter brief but charged with a subtle curiosity. When she finally spoke to him, it was over a stack of boxed lunches. "Hey, could you help me with these?" she asked, her voice soft but confident. Michael nodded, stepping closer. "Sure. Where do you want them?" She smiled, a flicker of relief in her eyes. "Just over there by the entrance." "Thanks." As they carried the boxes together, a quiet conversation began to unfold. Emma talked about her work as a social worker, her passion for helping others fueled by years of witnessing hardships and small victories alike. Michael found himself sharing fragments of his own story, carefully measured, cautious. He spoke of his job, his love for the river walks, and the little routines that anchored his days. Emma listened with genuine interest, her eyes never leaving his face. There was no rush, no pressure. Only a steady presence that made it easier for Michael to lower his guard, if only a fraction. He noticed how her laughter came easily, how she seemed to find joy in the simple moments, and he wondered if she sensed the walls he had built around himself. They spent the rest of the morning working side by side, their steps falling into a comfortable rhythm. During a break, they stood outside the center, the sun warming their faces as a gentle breeze stirred the fallen leaves. "So, do you do this often?" Michael asked, watching a flock of birds take flight. Emma shrugged, her smile thoughtful. Whenever I can. It's a way to remind myself that there's more to life than the daily grind. And you? First time, he admitted. I wasn't sure what to expect. She laughed, a sound that seemed to peel back years of silence from his heart. Neither was I the first time. But it's worth it. Meeting people, hearing their stories, it changes you. Michael nodded, feeling a flicker of something unfamiliar. A tentative hope that perhaps he was not as alone as he had believed. The conversation drifted to books, music, and the small pleasures that made life bearable. Emma spoke of her love for jazz and her weekend hikes in the nearby hills. Michael shared his favorite spots along the river, places where the city's noise fell away and stillness reigned. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, the charity event wound down. Volunteers gathered for a quick debrief, laughter and chatter filling the room. Michael found himself standing next to Emma once more, the space between them charged with unspoken possibility. I'm glad I came today, he said quietly, surprising himself. Me too, she replied, her eyes meeting his with a softness that made his breath catch. Before parting ways, Emma handed him a small card. Here's my number. Maybe we can grab coffee sometime? No pressure. Michael took it, feeling the weight of the moment settle around him. I'd like that. Walking home, the card folded in his pocket, Michael felt a strange lightness. The day had shifted something inside him, breaking through the carefully constructed barriers he'd held onto for so long. There was still fear, the lingering doubt of past wounds, but also the first stirrings of trust, fragile and new. Over the following days, Michael found himself thinking about Emma more often than he expected. Her kindness, her ease, and the way she seemed to understand without judgment played over in his mind like a quiet refrain. He debated calling her, uncertain if he was ready to open that door, but the card stayed close, an invitation and a promise. When they finally met again, it was at a small cafe tucked away on a side street, the kind of place where the barista knew your name and the air smelled of freshly ground coffee. Emma was waiting by the window, her smile as warm as the afternoon sun filtering through the glass. Their conversation flowed with surprising ease, a dance of questions and shared stories that peeled back layers without rush. Emma spoke of the challenges she faced in her work, the moments that broke her heart, and those that filled it with quiet triumph. Michael listened, finding comfort in her openness, and the way she didn't shy away from the complexities of life. In turn, he shared more of himself, not the polished version he presented to the world, but the man beneath the surface with his fears, regrets, and hopes. He told her about Sarah, the love that had shaped him and the loss that had left him adrift. Emma didn't flinch or offer empty reassurances. Instead, she simply listened, her presence steady and compassionate. As the afternoon waned, they lingered over cups of coffee, the world outside fading to a gentle hum. Michael felt the walls around his heart soften, brick by brick, as if her patience and warmth were a balm to old wounds. Before they parted, Emma reached across the table, her hand brushing lightly against his. No rush, she said softly. We'll take it one step at a time. Michael nodded, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could find his way back to love. Not as a destination, but as a journey shared with someone willing to walk beside him. In the days that followed, they began to spend more time together. Simple moments that felt extraordinary in their quiet significance. Walks along the river, visits to bookshops, sharing meals at small diners where the world seemed to slow down just enough to let connection grow. Michael's initial hesitance gradually gave way to a fragile trust. He found himself opening up in ways he hadn't imagined possible, revealing the layers of pain and hope that shaped him. Emma's patient encouragement was a steady current beneath their conversations, a reminder that vulnerability was not weakness but a bridge to something more. Their bond, still tentative, was marked by small gestures, a shared glance, a thoughtful question, the comfort of presence. It was a beginning fragile and new, yet filled with the promise of healing and the quiet possibility of love rediscovered. As the weeks unfolded, Michael found himself navigating a new terrain, one both exhilarating and unsettling. His connection with Emma deepened with each shared moment, yet beneath the surface of their growing closeness, old fears stirred, casting shadows over the fragile hope he was learning to embrace. They met often now, their time together marked by quiet walks along the riverbank, evenings spent in cozy cafes, and conversations that stretched into the night. Emma's presence was a steadying force, a gentle light that coaxed Michael from the corners where he had long hidden. Yet, even as their bond blossomed, he wrestled with the ghosts of his past, memories of Sarah, the ache of loss, and the protective walls he had built to shield himself from pain. One evening they sat on a park bench beneath a canopy of stars, the city's hum a distant lullaby. Michael stared at the dark water, watching the reflections shimmer and shift with the gentle breeze. "I'm scared," he confessed quietly, the weight of his words hanging between them. "Scared that I'll lose myself again. That opening up will only lead to more hurt." Emma reached out, her hand covering his. "I know," she said softly. "I've been there too. But holding on to fear can keep us trapped. Sometimes the only way forward is through it." He looked into her eyes, searching for certainty he wasn't sure he deserved. "How do you do it? Trust again after everything." She smiled, a mixture of sadness and strength. "It's not easy. It takes time and patience, with yourself and with the other person. It means being honest about your fears, and hoping the other person holds space for them." Michael swallowed hard, the vulnerability of the moment pressing against his carefully guarded heart. "I don't want to lose you," he admitted. "But I'm afraid I'll push you away before we get too far." Emma squeezed his hand gently. "Then let's promise to talk, even when it's hard. To be patient when the past shadows the present. I'm willing to try if you are." Her words settled something inside him, a fragile thread of courage weaving through the fabric of his doubts. He nodded, feeling the tremors of hope pulse beneath the surface. In the days that followed, Michael found himself reflecting more deeply on the walls he had erected. Memories of Sarah surfaced with unexpected sharpness, the laughter they shared, the quiet nights, the final moments clouded by silence and misunderstanding. He recognized how those memories had shaped his reluctance, how fear of repeating the past had kept him from fully embracing the possibility of new love. One afternoon as he and Emma visited a small art gallery, a painting caught his eye. A stormy sea with waves crashing against a jagged shore. The artist's brushstrokes conveyed both turmoil and beauty, chaos and calm entwined. Michael lingered before it, feeling a kinship with the tumultuous scene. Emma appeared beside him, her voice soft. "It's like life, isn't it? Beautiful even in the storms." He smiled, the metaphor resonating. "Yeah. Maybe healing is like that, finding peace amidst the waves." Their conversations grew more intimate, touching on hopes and fears, dreams deferred and reclaimed. Michael was surprised by how much he wanted to share, to be seen fully, flaws and all. Emma's unwavering acceptance became a balm, soothing the raw edges of his heart. Yet there were moments when the past clawed its way back. One evening, after a particularly vulnerable conversation, Michael withdrew, retreating into silence. Emma sensed the shift and gently pressed. "Talk to me," she urged. He hesitated, then confessed. "Sometimes I feel like a broken record, replaying the same fears and doubts. I want to move forward but I get stuck." Emma nodded, understanding. "That's okay. Healing isn't linear. It's messy and slow. But I'm here, walking beside you." Her steadfastness gave him strength, and slowly, Michael learned to lean into the discomfort, rather than flee from it. He discovered that vulnerability wasn't weakness but a bridge to deeper connection. As their relationship deepened, they began to envision a future together. A future that acknowledged the scars of the past but refused to be defined by them. Michael found himself dreaming again, imagining shared mornings and quiet evenings, laughter and support woven into the fabric of their days. One night as they sat on Emma's balcony, city lights twinkling below, Michael reached for her hand. "I want to try," he said simply. "To trust, to hope, to love." Emma's smile was radiant, the kind that lights up the darkest corners. "Me too." In that moment, beneath the vast sky, two wounded souls dared to believe in healing, in courage, and in the possibility of a love that could rise from the ashes of their pasts. The evening air hung heavy with the scent of rain, a distant rumble of thunder rolling across the city as Michael stood on the threshold of a decision that felt as vast and daunting as the storm gathering above. The small cafe where he and Emma had met countless times was closing, the soft glow of its lights casting long shadows on the wet pavement. Inside, The warmth and laughter they had shared moments before seemed a world away from the turmoil stirring within him. For days, Michael had wrestled with the fear that had always lurked beneath his tentative hope. The fear that opening his heart would only invite the pain he thought he had escaped. The memories of loss and loneliness clung stubbornly, whispering doubts that threatened to pull him back into the safety of solitude. Emma sat across from him, her eyes steady and full of understanding, sensing the storm within him even before he spoke. "Talk to me," she urged gently. He took a deep breath, the weight of his confession pressing hard against his chest. "I'm scared," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "Scared that if I let myself hope, I'll only end up hurt again. That I'll lose myself in trying to hold on." Emma reached across the table, her hand covering his, a simple gesture that carried the promise of support. "I know," she said softly, "but you don't have to carry that fear alone. I'm here with you." The vulnerability in his eyes met the warmth in hers, and for a moment, the world outside the cafe faded into the background, the rain tapping a steady rhythm against the windows, the city's distant hum softened to a murmur. It was a moment suspended between what had been and what could be. "I want to try," Michael said finally, the words fragile but resolute. "But I need to believe that this time it's different, that we're different." Emma nodded, her smile a beacon in the dim light. "We are. Because we choose to face it together." Their conversation stretched into the night, a tapestry woven from fears, hopes, and the tentative threads of trust. They spoke of the past with honesty, acknowledging the scars that shaped them without letting those wounds define their future. Michael confessed the moments when doubt overwhelmed him, the nights when loneliness crept in despite the light Emma brought to his life. Emma shared her own struggles, the battles she fought silently, the moments when hope felt distant. In their shared vulnerability they found strength, a bridge built from truth and the courage to be imperfect. As the cafe's last patrons filtered out and the staff began closing up, Michael suggested a walk. They stepped into the rain, the city transformed by the storm's gentle cleansing. Under a shared umbrella, they moved slowly through the slick streets, the world around them shimmering with reflections of neon and streetlights. They came to a small park, where the rain had softened to a whisper. Michael led Emma to a worn bench beneath an ancient oak tree, its branches heavy with raindrops. Sitting side by side, they watched the water ripple in the puddles, the quiet broken only by the occasional drip from leaf to ground. "I want to do this," Michael said, voice steady now. "No more running from fear. No more hiding. I want to be present, with you, with us." Emma leaned her head on his shoulder, the warmth of her touch grounding him amidst the storm. "And I'll be here, every step of the way." In that shared stillness, beneath the sheltering branches and the soft rain, Michael felt a shift, a turning point where past pain met present courage. The fear that had held him captive loosened its grip, replaced by the fragile but growing certainty that love was not about perfection, but about choice and commitment. Days later they marked this turning point with a small adventure, a hike to a nearby hill overlooking the city. The path was steep and tangled, winding through trees dripping with recent rain. Michael struggled at times, his breath heavy, the physical exertion mirroring the emotional journey he was on. Emma stayed close, her hand steady in his when the footing grew uncertain, her encouragement a steady pulse beneath his hesitation. At the summit they paused, the city sprawling below them like a glittering mosaic beneath a clearing sky. Michael took a deep breath, the expanse before him a metaphor for the new horizon he faced. Turning to Emma, he reached for her hand. It's a choice, isn't it? To keep climbing, even when it's hard." Emma smiled, eyes shining with unshed tears. "Yes, because the view from here is worth every step." They stood together, hands entwined, watching as the sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light over the city and their shared path ahead. Returning to the rhythm of daily life, Michael found the courage to confront the lingering doubts that surfaced now and then. He began opening up more at work, allowing colleagues a glimpse of the man behind the reserved demeanor. He called old friends, rekindling connections that had faded in the shadows of his past pain. With Emma, conversations grew deeper and more honest. They navigated disagreements with patience, learning that vulnerability included the willingness to be wrong and the grace to forgive. Michael discovered that love was less about grand gestures and more about the small, consistent acts of presence and understanding. One evening as they cooked dinner together in Emma's apartment, laughter spilling between them over a shared joke, Michael paused to take in the scene, the warmth of the kitchen, the easy rhythm of their companionship. He realized that the dance he had feared was not a performance but a shared creation, a balance of give and take, trust and patience. Later, as they settled on the couch, Michael pulled Emma close, the steady beat of her heart against his reassuring melody. "Thank you," he whispered. "For believing, for being patient." Emma smiled, her fingers tracing gentle patterns on his arm. "We're in this together." In that moment, Michael knew he had crossed a threshold. Not because the past had vanished, but because he had chosen to face the future with hope and open arms. The turning point was not a destination but a commitment, a promise to walk forward, hand in hand, through whatever storms and sunlight life would bring. The morning sun filtered softly through the pale curtains of their shared apartment, casting warm hues across the hardwood floors and the scattered books that lined the shelves. Michael and Emma had taken this step together. A modest move into a place that felt less like a refuge and more like a home. It was a new chapter, one filled with the quiet hum of daily life, and the gentle weaving of two lives into one. Their mornings began with the familiar ritual of brewing coffee, Emma's laughter mingling with the steam rising from their mugs, as they settled by the window overlooking the city street below. The world outside moved with its usual fervor, but inside, there was a sense of calm, a rhythm they had created together. Michael found comfort in the small routines they shared, folding laundry side by side, cooking meals that sometimes went awry but always ended with smiles, and evenings spent curled together on the couch, the soft glow of the lamp casting shadows that danced along the walls. These moments, ordinary yet profound, were the threads binding their lives. Their relationship was not untouched by challenges. There were days when old insecurities crept in, shadows of past hurts that whispered doubts and fears. Work pressures, family obligations, and the inevitable misunderstandings tested their patience and resolve. Yet through each trial they leaned on the foundation they had built: trust, honesty, and the willingness to grow together. Michael remembered the early days of cautious hope, the tentative steps toward vulnerability that had felt like crossing a chasm. Now, with Emma beside him, those steps had become a steady path. They learned to communicate with openness, to listen without judgment, and to forgive with grace. One evening, after a particularly long day, they sat at the kitchen table, the remnants of dinner still warm on their plates. Emma reached across, her hand finding Michael's. "I'm proud of us," she said softly, "for choosing this, for holding on." Michael squeezed her hand, a smile touching his lips. "Me too. It hasn't been easy, but it's worth it." As seasons changed, so did their bond deepen. They celebrated anniversaries marked not by grand gestures but by shared memories. A hike to the hill where the city stretched out beneath them, a quiet dinner at the cafe where they first met, the simple joy of a walk along the river at dusk. Friends and family began to see the transformation in Michael. The man who once retreated into solitude now radiated a quiet confidence and warmth. Emma's presence brought out a lightness in him, a willingness to embrace life's complexities with an open heart. Their love was a dance of resilience, patience, and faith. They discovered that enduring love was not about perfection but about choosing each other every day, in moments of joy and in moments of struggle. One afternoon, as they unpacked boxes in the apartment, Michael found a photograph tucked between the pages of a book, a snapshot of the river at sunrise, a place that had been his solace. He looked at Emma, who was arranging flowers on the windowsill. "This," he said, holding the photo gently, "reminds me of where I started. How far we've come." Emma smiled, her eyes reflecting the same warmth. "And where we're going." Their journey was far from over, but in the quiet glow of their shared life, Michael and Emma had found something enduring. A love that thrived not in spite of their pasts, but because of the courage to face them together.